Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. Today we're going to be checking out the CTAN shard of the Void Dragon, what he brings to us Necron players and how he synergizes with the current Necron Codex. Right then, so as an elite option within the Codex, he comes in at 18 power level or 350 points, and your army may only include one of this model. Now as for keywords, he is a monster, he's a character, he's got the fly keyword, and obviously he's a CTAN shard. So CTAN shards cannot join any dynasty code, but they can be placed within the detachment and will not affect your dynasty whatsoever. They just don't gain the benefits of that dynasty code. Also, one CTAN shard can be selected per detachment, so it's going to cost you more CP to be bringing more of those guys. So going into their stat line, so they've got movement 8-inch, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 2+, strength 6, toughness 7, wounds 9, attacks 5, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. So he's got less strength than the Nightbringer, although you'll see later in the video why that doesn't actually matter. In fact, he's stronger if anything. He does have one less attack than the Nightbringer though, but he does have an improved armor save of a 3+. Let's get stuck into those abilities then. So living metal, regaining lost wounds at the start of the turn. Pretty handy for this unit because it's on 9 wounds. The next ability pairs quite nicely with living metal. It's called Necrodermis. So not only does it give you a 4+ in-run save, but also the Nightbringer cannot lose more than 3 wounds per phase. So only if you're going up against a well-balanced faction that can do 3 wounds in the psychic phase, 3 in the shooting phase and 3 in the combat phase, he's not going to be going down so easily. Then as mentioned already, living metal heals up one of those wounds for your next turn. He's got Enslaved Star God, so this one's actually not so good for him because it means he cannot take any relics or be the Warlord. Not only that, the Lookout Sir rule does not apply to your CTAN shard of the Void Dragon. So it doesn't matter that he's under 10 wounds, it doesn't apply. He's then got Reality Unravel, so he blows up on a 4+ and causes D3 mortal wounds to everything within 6 inches once he's destroyed. Then the last of his abilities is Matter Absorption. So you roll a D6 for each enemy vehicle destroyed by the Void Dragon in any phase. Then for each 2+ you roll, you regain a wound to a max of 3 per phase. So when you combine all of these abilities, it nets him a fair amount of wounds that could have been lost. Okay, so as you're probably aware, CTAN shards have CTAN powers. The Void Dragon actually has a Voltaic Storm power. So this is where you select an enemy unit within 18 inches and that is visible to the CTAN shard. It can't be a character that has 9 wounds or less unless they're the nearest enemy unit. So you roll a D6 and on a 2+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. And if it's a vehicle, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. And also if it was a vehicle, until the start of your next turn, if that vehicle's damage table changed due to loss of wounds, and it goes down to half wounds when determining the characteristics from the damage table. So it's really strong against vehicles in particular, but even the D3 damage against non-vehicles is still a pretty good ability. It's virtually smite on a 2+. So he also knows one other CTAN power from the powers list, which I'll go over in a moment. So if your Void Dragon did not advance or fall back, he can actually use 2 powers, but they cannot be the same power. As for the powers then, so there are 6 options here, so you can either roll off to determine which powers you got or you just select them. It depends on what you agree with your opponent when you're doing this. So they're a bit like psychic powers, except they don't need to be cast and they cannot be denied. Okay, so the first power is Antimatter Meteor. You roll a d6 and the closest enemy unit within 24 inches and visible suffers 3 mortal wounds. And on a 6+, the enemy suffers D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So this one's really powerful, and again it's virtually like casting Smite, except you're always rolling a 6 on the D3 roll damage. And even has the potential of doing 6 mortal wounds, so it's a solid option. Power 2 times Arrow, so you select an enemy unit within 18 inches and visible, you roll a d6, and if the total equals or exceeds the wounds characteristic of any models in that enemy unit, your opponent selects one of those models to be destroyed. So this one can target characters, so you want to be targeting elites or HQ units that have between say 2 and 4 wounds on their datasheet. Note that the wounds and damage is not being caused here, so any rules that ignore damage or wounds cannot be used against this power. Also worth noting that this isn't going to hurt vehicles, as they're usually more than 6 wounds, and vehicles are the ones that you want to be targeting to enable your Matter Absorption ability to be regaining wounds. So it might not be the best option for your Void Dragon here, that one. Power 3, Sky of Falling Stars, so you select up to 3 enemy units within 24 inches of your CTAN shard, and on a roll of a 1 to 5, if the dice roll is less than the number of models in the unit, then that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So more easy mortal wounds here, as most units in the game have at least 5 in a squad, so you should be able to roll under that. It also has the potential of doing 9 mortal wounds because you're selecting 3 enemy units here. Power 4, Cosmic Fire, so you roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 9 inches of the C'tan, and on a 4+, the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So this one's quite similar to the previous power, except it's not limited to 3 units, but the range is, it's only 9 inches. So if you plan on getting really close to a lot of units, then you'll be catching a lot of them in the 9-inch bubble for the d3 mortal wounds a pop. So really good against horde armies in particular that bunch up. Seismic Assault is power 5, so select an enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to your C'tan shard. Roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and on a 6+, that unit suffers a mortal wound to a maximum of 10 mortal wounds. So this one is your anti-horde power. So a squad of 20 will on average take about 3 mortal wounds here, which sort of matches what the first power does, Antimatter Meteor. So you want to be doing this on sort of 24 models or more, because then you'll be scoring 4 mortal wounds. That's where it becomes a little bit more useful, but I wouldn't say it's the best power by far. Then finally, power 6, Transdimensional Thunderbolt. So select an enemy unit within 24 inches and visible. Characters under 9 wounds cannot be selected unless they're the closest enemy unit. Roll a d6, and on a 2+, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. Then roll 1d6 for each other enemy within 3 inches of the selected unit, and on a 4+, they suffer a mortal wound. So again, it works well if they've grouped their units quite close together and playing a horde type army such as Tyranids. They're quite a good example because they tend to clump together for their synapse. So as for powers, they sort of all do the same sort of thing. They throw mortal wounds out. I mean, I always quite like the look of Sky of Falling Stars, as you can be throwing it out right from turn 1 because it's got a good range on it. It's pretty easy to do as well. But as the Void Dragon wants to be clearing off vehicles to regain wounds, then maybe Antimatter Meteor is one of the better choices here. Okay, so weapon loadout time. So the Void Dragon has a weapon named the Spear of the Void Dragon. So it's both a shooting and a melee weapon. So starting off with the shooty option, so it's a range 12-inch, heavy 1, strength 9, -4 AP and d6 damage. And each time an attack is made with this weapon and a hit is scored, you draw a straight line between your Void Dragon and the enemy unit, and any units that you tag within that line also are hit with the same attack. You can basically wound for those as well. And any wound that goes through a vehicle model, the damage is actually d3 + 3 rather than d6, which is obviously much better. So very strong here. It's only heavy 1, but if you position the Void Dragon correctly and target the enemy unit that is behind, say, another unit or 2, then you're wounding them too. Obviously getting more than 1 unit within 12 inches of the Void Dragon and the target can be quite tricky, but I'm sure in some circumstances you can catch 2 or even 3 units hurting multiple units at once. The guaranteed damage on vehicles is also quite nice, especially if you're regaining lost wounds when you destroy vehicles. So the melee side is a strength +3, making it strength 9 again, -4 AP and damage d6. And again, if you're allocating it to vehicle models, then it's d3 + 3 instead of the d6. So pretty much the exact same stat wise, except now you've got 5 attacks to be smashing with. So for the people that like the quick maths with the attacks, so the shard has 5 attacks that hit on 2s, so you're probably going to be getting at least 4 attacks going through here. Against toughness 4 or less, you require 2s to wound, so that will be about 3 or 4 wounds that go through there. Against toughness 5 right up to toughness 8, you'll need 3s. I mean, wounding toughness 8 on 3s is quite crazy really. So on average you're going to be scoring about 2 or 3 here. Toughness 9 is 4s to wound, so you'll get about 2 on average there. Guys, let me know if you'd prefer me telling you these as decimals. Sometimes the average will be like 3.5, but obviously you can't roll 3.5 successful wounds. It's either 3 wounds or 4 wounds, so let me know which you do prefer. So anyway, these guys are quite a menace in both shooting and melee, although the range is only 12 inches, but to be honest, the other 2 named C'tan shards don't even have range attacks, so it's yet another bonus. So moving away from that, there's a few stratagems that can affect your C'tan shards. So firstly, there's Strange Echoes. For 1 CP, you can swap out your C'tan power for another one of the powers it doesn't know. Now at first this might appear like a waste, as you think, why would I swap it out? So there's 2 reasons. First, you may have actually randomly rolled for your power, and it might not be that good for you in the game, so swapping it out would be ideal. And secondly, once you get into a different range, like 9-inch range, you may want to be using a power that hurts them in closer proximity, such as the Cosmic Fire power, which hurts every unit within 9-inch. That's just an example. I mean, there's lots of different situations where positionally your C'tan will be in a far better position to use a different power, and for 1 CP you can switch it out. Another stratagem called Dimensional Destabilization, which costs you 1 CP. You look at your powers of the C'tan table, roll a d6, and then you get the corresponding power from that table, even if you've already got it that phase. So it's only for the 1 phase, and you're going to be using an extra power. The amount of mortal wounds that each power does, I mean, they're all pretty good. They're all pretty valid, so it's not bad, that one. The third stratagem in the list is the Entropic Strike. It costs you 2 CP and you simply remove your opponent's invuln save. So those vehicles that come with invuns in particular won't be getting any. I mean, even characters that have to heavily rely on their invuln save, such as Storm Shields, won't have it, and that -4 AP will slice straight through them. So overall, he's pretty insane if I'm honest. He pretty much does all the basics that the other C'tan shards do with their powers and abilities. He's strength 9, which gives him an advantage over the others, and he's got a ranged attack in the shooting phase. Okay, he doesn't go up to strength 14 like the Nightbringer does, and doesn't ignore invuln saves like he does, although you can pop that stratagem as I just mentioned. At a glance, he feels like a vehicle killer, but really he kills everything. Vehicles are just an added bonus for getting wounds back. Realistically though, how many vehicles are your opponents going to be bringing in a list in any given 40k game? So it's not mega OP by any stretch, but if he does destroy a couple in a game, so it could be the difference between him dying or not, especially when he can only lose 3 wounds per phase. Then add living metal on top. So the issue with this C'tan shard is getting into combat. So the movement at 8 is okay, but you can't advance and use double C'tan powers, and he's going to get shot down as there's no lookout sir applied to him, which is a huge flaw. Now I know he can only take a max of 3 wounds per phase, so it's quite highly likely that he won't die in turn 1, but if he's not killing stuff by turn 2, turn 3, then he's wasted on his points, as your opponent isn't going to allow him to just get into combat without a fight. It's going to take a lot of gunning down, which does help the rest of your army's survivability, but remember you invested 350 points into this model, so making his points back is going to be a bit of a task. There's also the issue of being tied up in combat. I mean, he does have fly to get you out of it, but it's going to slow your progress down slightly, giving your opponent more time to deal with him. Now, any of the 3 main C'tan shards are a huge gamble as they're all 350 points, so you do need to ensure he kills 350 points just to be on par with what you spent. But even par is okay, as you may have taken out some really key units in the game. Anyway, so as for his rating, I'm going to be giving the C'tan shard of the Void Dragon a Planet 40k rating of 4.5 out of 5. In some ways he's actually better than the other C'tan shards, in some ways he isn't. He's sort of on the same level as them in my opinion, they just do different things. The Deceiver can do that ability where he's putting them into strategic reserves. Nightbringer is just an absolute animal in combat with the strength 14 scythe. And this guy's strength 9 and he's hurting vehicles. It's also list dependent, depending on what your opponent brings really. So let me know in the comments if you agree with this rating. Also let me know your experiences with using him. Do you prefer using him to the Nightbringer or the Deceiver? Also, how many wounds did you get back from vehicles? That's an interesting one. So guys, hit that subscribe button on the way out. We want to try and get close to 2,500 by Christmas, so still a fair way to go here. Also remember to hit that like button to promote the video. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you in the next one.